Hi guys, welcome to this very special video. We're talking GDPR today, and there is no better place to do that than at DMA House, the home of the Direct Marketing Association. We're going to go inside now and get this video done because, as you can see, it's a bit snowy out here and I'm very cold. So let's go chat GDPR. So here we are at the Direct Marketing Association in central London, and this is the definitive guide to GDPR. My name's Daniel Lack, I'm the head of digital at Growth Track, and together with our friends at DezRez, we're going to answer all those questions that are affecting your business and try and break down the elements of the GDPR that apply to you guys. With me today, Jenna Tiffany, founder of Let's Talk Strategy and a fellow DMA Email Marketing Council member like myself, but also chair of the Email Marketing Best Practice Hub. Jenna, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming down. And ready to get into this? We'll break the GDPR down and tell these guys what it does for them and how it applies.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do it. Let's go.
Fantastic. A lot of people out there in the world of business, let alone estates and lettings agents, believe that this whole GDPR thing is centered around sending people emails and their email lists. And it isn't. It's actually nothing to do with emails apart from a small crossover on e-privacy. This is about how they're collecting data, how they're using the data, and does the customer know that they're using the data in that way?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point because there has been a huge focus on email marketing and a lot of scaremongering that you're going to need to delete all of your email marketing lists. And yes, that is true if you don't have the correct consent, but there are still laws in place today, so e-privacy, the PACA law as well, that exists today, that a number of marketers have broken in preparation of getting ready for the GDPR incorrectly so. But yeah, the whole point of the GDPR is to build trust, to enforce security and protect consumers' data. It's not about protecting email marketing or ruining the channel or anything like that, or taking email marketing away from businesses. It's actually to make that trust exchange clearer between the customer and the brand.
Exactly, and I think that as we go through this, we're going to talk a few points so that you understand that it's not all about consent. There are customer relationships that stand in terms of contact, so it's not time to panic and throw data away. It's just to understand what data you can hold, what data you can use, and when you can use it. Let's focus on estate lettings agents, their business activities, and how these new GDPR legislations are going to affect those guys. Specifically, there's an awful lot of scaremongering out there. Agents phone us every day. Oh, the GDPR, I've got to do my list, and I've got to send out this email to re-permission people, and I've got to throw all this data away, and I can't lose my entire business. And this is scaremongering. So I think what we need to kind of understand is the kind of activities that an agent's doing, such as property matching, such as the information they're gathering in order to do that, a budget, an area, a number of bedrooms. I think what agents need to understand is actually this is a service, and this is where the service that they're providing the customer starts. And at that point, they become a customer. And at that point, that is the reason to contact and have the data.
Yeah, I think the scaremongering, the €20 million fine, the 4% annual turnover, of the risk of fines, of course the risks are real. And using those figures, obviously get the headline, they get the click, they get the view on the video, they get the comment.
Of course.
And that has been one of the key focuses, and it's something that's talked about more than anything as part of the GDPR. But that's a result of not doing it correctly, whereas actually a lot of organisations, like you're saying, are in fear that they're not going to do it correctly at the risk of getting those fines. So I think really what you need to think about is if you have a customer who's given you data and they've said to you, I'm looking for properties in this particular area, and they have consented to signing up to your newsletter, and they want you to send those properties that are based on that location that they've given you, they've provided their email address, then of course you're okay to send that because that's what the customer's asked for. But if you start selling them a different service, you start selling them something about shoes that they've never asked for you for, then that's when you don't have consent to send that, and that's where you're abusing that data and that trust that that customer's given you by providing that data to you.
And that's actually where consent does come into play, because you're coming out of that customer relationship and now you need consent to send them shoes. And that's the difference, isn't it? The
Yeah.
customer relationship, as far as we understand it, as far as our interpretation, is that this isn't GDPR, this is e-privacy. And this is a customer relationship being present, it being the relevant customer relationship, and it being within a relevant time frame. So not from 5 years ago, but a current customer relationship. And with that relationship in place, you can contact your customers, you can send them what they want to send. You don't need them to tick a consent box. This is within the realm of an existing current customer relationship. When you talk about shoes, then they would have need to have signed up some sort of granular consent, which we'll talk about later, to say, oh, and by the way, I love shoes, tick. And that's a different thing.
Yeah, exactly. The key point about all of this is to have the evidence. So if you have the evidence, you have an existing relationship with a customer, then of course you can document that. Having evidence of your data handling policy, process, is really, really key. And probably a lot of organisations don't currently have that documented. And that doesn't need to be something really complicated. It can be one page of A4. If we receive customer data, this is what we do with it. This is how we use it. This is how long we keep it for, and the reasons why you keep it for that period of time. I think the other thing to touch on is that there's a lot of fear that people are holding data for too long. Now, if you're holding data for 10 years, yes, that may be too long. And however long that is for each organisation is very different, but the key piece is being able to have evidence as to why you're keeping that data. So if a customer comes to you, they're looking for property, they then buy that property, do you then need to keep that data for providing support, for providing additional services that they've asked for? Or actually, has that need for that data now eradicated and expired? Therefore, then you need to delete that data. But it's not a case of just pressing delete on everything because GDPR is coming in.
So let's dive into these activities. Let's look at data processing and service. We'll start with the obvious one for these guys, which is the storing and processing of data, which they do within their CRMs, within their software systems, like DezRez, for example, and the kind of things that they would do processing that data. So they're going to take information like the number of bedrooms someone might be looking for, the area they're looking for, the budget they've got, those kind of things. And that's all part of providing the service. And how the GDPR affects this area is actually not sending, but processing that data.
Yeah, so being able to document what your data process is a key requirement, because what you need to remember is that if the ICO or a customer complains and the ICO needed to find out what your process was, are you able to find out quickly what that process is? Do you have the documentation? Is everybody in your organisation aware of how they should be handling data? And that's the key piece there, to keep the trust and the security of that data. But the other thing to think about here is your agencies and suppliers. You touched on there, the CRM system. You, as the controller of the data, need to make sure you're doing your due diligence, that supplier or agency or consultant, whoever has access to that customer data or is processing it, have the secure infrastructure in place to look after that data. And there are several clauses that you now need to have within contracts to prove that you've done that due diligence, to prove that that supplier and agency is going to adhere by that and look after your customers' data. The ICO has a brilliant document on this that includes all of the clauses that need to go into both the contract between yourself and the agency or supplier, but also that the supplier is going to need to have in their contracts to you as the controller of that data.
So it's what you need to demonstrate compliance, or how you demonstrate compliance, should I say, which is the data policies, the privacy policies. We've got the legitimate interest assessment, which we'll talk about a bit further. Where to get them, what goes in them, what they look like, those kind of things. And we're going to help you with that after the video. But it's nothing really to panic about. No,
nothing at all. You just need to feel comfortable that you have the process documented, that you have evidence that you have spoken to your supplier and they have guaranteed that they will handle the data in this way, and your process accommodates that by doing X, Y, and Z. And that's unique to your organisation, that's unique to your business. And that's why sometimes it's a little bit tricky, because it isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all answer, and I know that can be really frustrating. But the number one question that's the same to everybody is, what do you want to do with that data, and how are you going to store it? Do you have consent and permission for it? And if you do, what does that look like? Or touching on what you were saying earlier, are they already a customer and therefore they're expecting a service from you? So have they come to you and said that they want to look at a particular property, but they may not sign up to your email newsletter? You're providing a service at that stage, and then you could ask them if they're interested in signing up. I think that's the other piece, that people think that they have just one type of consent and then they can't ask for anything else. Of course you can. If you already have consent to send an email newsletter, you could ask them if they wanted to receive something else, want to receive offers from you. There's nothing stopping that at all. But you can't send them it in the hope that then they want to receive it.
But we can touch on that a bit later, because there are ways of mixing messages within your communications. And again, we've got this far and we haven't deleted any data yet. So we're doing well, guys. Let's see how much further we can get. So let's talk about this thing that we mentioned, which was using data for service provision. A couple of very simple points up there: service provision or marketing and any overlap. And then obviously the existing relationship, the grounds for usage. And very, very important here, an existing customer relationship, as an agent, it might not be they've given you any money. The service starts the minute they register with you, the minute they walk through your door, they call you because they want to see properties, or they want you to start managing their properties. That's when your service starts. You haven't taken any money, but they've definitely come in and asked you to provide them with a service. And again, let's think about this element of complaint. If someone has asked you to do something for them, there isn't going to be a complaint, because it's what they're expecting. So let's touch on this. We just mentioned this a minute ago.
Yeah.
Someone comes to me, I'm an agent, they walk into my office, I say, "Hi, Jenna, what are you looking for?" You tell me your area that you're looking in, you tell me your budget, and I say, "No problem, we'll be sending you those properties via email, thanks very much for registering." You go out happy, expecting me to send you properties.
Yes, so that is a service. Can you include marketing messages in service messages? You can, but the balance needs to be higher to be a service message. It is still service messaging. You can't start loading it full with marketing messages and offers within that first communication that you're sending. But on the other side of that, if your marketing team are wanting to send the communication, then it's more likely to be a marketing message and not a service message. So you just have to have a little bit of common sense with that approach. But yeah, of course, you come in, that customer's engaged with you. Like you said, they may not have actually been a transaction there, but they want something from you. They want information from you. They want your service.
And that's the relationship, and that's the reason to hold the data and process the data, which is the GDPR bit. There's no emailing yet.
Yeah.
And then the reason to email them, which is the e-privacy bit, which is they want that information from you. And to drop in a message about legal or mortgages or whatever it is that you're trying to do to help that service along, if it's beneficial and the customer's expecting it, great. Again, don't go sending them the email about shoes.
Exactly.
So we'll just touch on the marketing, just to finish off this bit, is that if you are marketing to clients, if it's not properties they've asked for, or if it's not service updates on tenancies they're involved in, or managing their properties, and it is actually trying to market a service to them, this whole element of client relationship, you can use that to try and gain the consent. And obviously, if you've got consent, then that's a green light.
Yeah. The key word is evidence, and this is the part where I think there's been a lot of scaremongering about the evidence piece, but you have that process documented, you are storing that data securely, you've done your due diligence with your suppliers, you're making some real steps as a business to make sure you're looking after customer data and you're keeping that trust and security in place. If you start using that data for reasons that you don't have consent for, because you want to, for whatever reason, then that's where you're not being GDPR compliant. That's where customers are more likely to complain.
And actually, you're not being e-privacy or PECA compliant,
No.
which has been in place for, gosh, 20, where are we now, 2018, 20, 30 years now. And actually, the point of that's where you can't email people without a reason. And if you're breaking that, you're breaking that already. The people that have been fined, you hear about Honda and Flybe and Morrisons, they weren't fined under GDPR, they were fined for breaking the privacy laws, which are currently in existence. And that's what we need to remember here.
Yeah, exactly, and the ICO has been very, very clear on that. You can't break one law to be compliant with another. and a number of organisations have fallen over on this. And you know, those legislations, like you said, they've been around since the 1970s. The GDPR is there to make sure that you are holding data with consent, you have permission to send to, and you're secure. You're using it in a secure way. That's what the GDPR is. E-privacy and PECA, they remain as is. They're here today. So if you're already not compliant against those laws, then you really need to be having a look at that as a starting point.
And you can find them, same website, the ICO website, they'll explain exactly what they are. They're not very difficult. It's basically your reasons to contact someone. In fact, it's digital, so your reasons to contact someone digitally, and it just goes to the same thing here. Number one, you've got consent, or number two, you have an existing client relationship. So everyone that's talking about GDPR, every so-called expert, every video we see, whether it be an association from the industry, whether it be legal, they all mention one word. In fact, they hang their hat on this word consent. And I don't think there's any understanding as to why you would need consent and why you wouldn't need consent. And it's not the be-all and end-all of things, because the existing client relationship is a reason to hold and use customer data. And I think people need to understand that. But in order to understand what consent is and why you need consent, we kind of need to look at something called the e-privacy laws, and we need to look at PECA. And it's been around for a while now, and what that states is actually your reason to contact people. And consent is only one reason, because the other reason, as we touched on, is actually they're an existing customer. You have an existing customer relationship with them. So I think what we need to know is, what is e-privacy? What is it?
So e-privacy is a directive, a law that means that you need to have consent or an existing customer relationship to be able to send digital communications. So whether that is email marketing or SMS.
And this is in place already.
Yes, it is.
So if you don't have consent and you don't have existing customer relationship, you can't send direct marketing to these people via the digital channels.
No, exactly, and that's where some brands have fallen over trying to get GDPR compliant. They've forgotten about e-privacy.
So why would you use consent?
So for new customers, you want that affirmative action that they want to receive marketing communications from you, and you have evidence of that. For existing customers, it may be that actually they have a service from you, they're looking at properties, but they haven't signed up to your marketing. And so you want to get consent so you can start marketing to them.
And this is kind of outside of the matching and the small marketing messages, the little bits that kind of go along with what you're doing. This is, I now just really want my marketing department to get in touch with them and start pushing my services to you. And that's when you need consent. There's also this thing about extending the lifespan of your contact with that customer, because once they're no longer a customer, obviously if you have consent, you can keep marketing to them, whereas if you don't, I'm guessing you have to end that relationship.
Yeah, it's kind of not a definitive line on that, but yes, of course, if that customer and you have no need to keep that data or keep in contact with that customer, and they haven't signed up to your marketing communications or say your monthly newsletter that you send, then yes, you won't be able to communicate with them anymore. If they sign up to your monthly newsletter and they're constantly engaging with that and they're opening that, then you still have an opportunity to promote your services.
Because you have consent.
Exactly.
So now we need to look at consent under the GDPR, because this is where the GDPR and e-privacy are butting heads. This is where all the confusion is coming into it, because this is the place where they meet. They haven't met yet, but now we've got changes to consent. What do those changes look like?
Yeah, so it's really simple. You can no longer have a soft opt-out. So
that's tick a box if you don't want to receive, or untick a box, those kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. It now needs to be explicitly clear what the customer's signing up to, and they need to drive the action. So they need to sign that box, tick that box. It's not a case of your brand already ticking the box for them and they have to untick that. That's no longer GDPR compliant. The other really important piece to consent is to have the evidence, to document that evidence and to store that evidence, so that if you did have a customer complain who said, I never signed up to receive your newsletter, why am I receiving it? You have the evidence to show that they signed up on this date to receive this communication from you.
And let's be clear, this is easily documented evidence.
Yeah.
CRMs keep a timestamp, websites, sign-up forms keep a timestamp. And when we talk about ticking a box, it could just be someone's filled in their details and hit submit. So as long as it's an affirmative action made by the person that's signing up.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really clear, explicitly clear what they are signing up to.
So this is the privacy notice surrounding your sign up, telling them exactly what they've signed up for so they know, well, so they know what they're going to get, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And how you're going to use that data to give them a better experience. I mean, why not sell the benefits as marketeers, why they should be signing up to your newsletter? And it doesn't have to be really lengthy, just needs to be in plain English that everybody would understand.
And if you're going to send them more than one type of thing, and I don't mean marketing and a newsletter, I mean different types of newsletter or different types of offers, you've got to make sure that's granular. And by that we mean you've got to tick a box for each of the things that you want to receive.
Yeah, to be as clear as possible. And if you put yourself into the customer's shoes, would you understand what you were signing up for and what you're going to receive, and set those expectations all the way through that sign-up process?
But let's go back to the service we talked about. Very, very common service for estate agents and letting agents. When people register to see properties, they put in their details and they're putting in specific details on your matching form that says, we would like to send you properties, or you would like to receive properties, please fill in your details here and hit submit. That is not only service provision, but that's just very clear and expressive of what you're going to send them.
Yeah, that's an affirmative action by a customer that they want to receive that communication from you by entering their email address.
So it kind of hits both. They're got it under an existing customer relationship, and they've got consent as well. So you're covering them too.
Exactly. It doesn't have to just be one or the other. They can both be a customer and give you consent.
Ah, the magic question. We get an awful lot of people phoning us up, telling us that their legal team or their GDPR experts have said, right, you've got until May the 25th to send an email around to everyone to get them to opt in under the GDPR. And that just simply isn't true. There's a couple of reasons, and I think we should do this almost quick fire. I'll ask you the question, you give the explanation, and it will be just this definitive guide of everything. Number one, if you have an existing client relationship with someone, should you send them a repermissioning email?
No, unless you want to send them something completely different, or you want to get them into your email marketing. But that would fall back to consent. That's what we've already spoken.
But they're already a client, so you can email them.
You can email them, yes.
Number two, if you do not have permission from someone in the first place, if you cannot prove they've opted in, if you don't have any opt-in, should you send them a repermissioning email?
No. And if they've opted out, you shouldn't. The risk is huge to do that, but that customer's never signed up. The whole point of a repermissioning campaign is to get repermission for something that you already had.
Exactly. That's the key word, guys. It's repermissioning. If you never had the permission in the first place, you couldn't email them anyway, so you can't send them a repermissioning email. And that's where a lot of these big companies have fallen over and actually got their fines. This is breaking e-privacy here. So the last one that I would ask you within these questions and within this kind of consent thing is that if your consent already meets the guidelines of the GDPR, i.e. you're asking people to put their email address in, it says sign up for our newsletter and we will send you our monthly newsletter and marketing information here, please enter your email below. And they enter their email and tick the box, do you need to send them a repermissioning email?
No, as long as you're documenting that evidence.
Because it's already in line with the current
GDPR. Exactly, as
Fantastic.
long as you're clear and explicit, yes.
Awesome. There you go, repermissioning emails. So very quickly, I think we should cover the privacy policy, privacy notices, opt-in forms, that kind of thing. This is the boring part of the whole GDPR. You can see there's a policy there. I think that's one from Microsoft sitting on the screen there. And it's not the fact that it's drowning with data, because they've put an awful lot in there, but it's just to point out how clear this is. Personal data we collect, explained. How we use personal data, explained. Reasons we share personal data, explained. It's not a difficult document to put together. There are templates on the ICO. Having one of these on your website is a great way to get covered on this front. What should be in them?
The key point of this is to be transparent. So you've touched on there, Microsoft has been explicitly clear. You need to make sure that it's not ambiguous, that any of your customers will be able to understand it. And your privacy policy needs to be displayed at every single point of that sign-up journey. And it needs to be available. It shouldn't be hidden into a dark page of your website. It should be really, really clear and upfront.
Which is basically the second question answered there. So there you go, guys. We've got that one covered. Opt-in notices and opt-outs.
Yeah, so opt-ins need to be, again, really clear and transparent. What is the customer signing up for? What are they going to receive? And you can put that in a marketing way. You can sell the benefits. There's some great examples of other companies like Channel 4 who did a really great privacy policy. They used Alan Carr, the comedian, and it's a really different approach to creative privacy. It doesn't have to be a really boring, bland
Well, these are videos,
thing.
aren't they, as well, that people are doing, so they're quite engaging.
Exactly, and then a customer's more likely to actually understand what you're going to do with that data. Opt-outs, you shouldn't be using opt-outs from GDPR.
So we can't have an opt-out anymore, we know that. You've got to opt in. Allowing people to opt out though, or allowing people to unsubscribe, that's another thing that we need to talk about. And that's just about, again, it's got to be really clear, it's got to be ever present.
Yeah, and that's best practice today. Again, that's something that isn't new, but yes, your unsubscribe within your email communications should be really, really clear. You should be able to provide a customer with choice, that they can unsubscribe from your communications or your marketing, and it be an easy process for that customer to do. But the other point of opting in, opting out, is that you need to give the customer choice and not disadvantage a customer if they don't sign up to receive your communications.
Which is granular and transparency. And what we mean by that, as you've just said, is choice, explain what everything is at every step, and be very transparent as to what they're going to receive.
Yeah, and ultimately, what customer wouldn't, you're going to create a really good relationship with your customer, and you'll have a much better engagement rate and effectiveness of marketing by doing those things anyway.
If you've got to hide it, they probably didn't want it anyway.
Exactly.
And that's why you're hiding it,
Yeah.
I would guess. So what do I do with data I can't provide any evidence for, non-opt-in information or other uses for the data? Caveat to this is not data that we've just plucked out the air. This might be data that's older, that we might not know how they were opted in. They might be customer information, but it's a few years old. What we're talking about here is other uses for the data. Estate agents have to keep data for a certain number of years. There's accounts information that you might need. There might be support bits and pieces going on. We're not talking about marketing to these people. We're just talking about keeping that data for the reasons that we have to.
Then yes, you can, because you have a business need. So again, it goes back to the data processing policy, and make sure that you have that documented in there.
And this is where we hear that other magic phrase, legitimate interest,
Yeah.
which doesn't apply to sending emails, which is what a lot of people seem to think it does. It actually applies to processing the data and having the data. And this is an absolute fantastic description or definition or example even of legitimate interest.
Yeah, exactly. You have a business need to provide extra support once the service has now ended, but you're going to need that data. You're going to need to provide more support. So you have a legitimate interest to keep that data, and as long as you're documenting very clearly why you're keeping that data for those reasons, then yes, that's fine.
Not responded to repermissioning. This was the difficult one we were talking about, was that if you're repermissioning people you didn't need to repermission, then you've made your own mistakes there, and just don't do that, basically. But in terms of not responded to repermissioning, if someone hasn't responded and you've sent out one email, obviously you can send out a second email, or you could send out a third email. There's going to come a point where I think you should get the hint, but that kind of thing. But if they haven't responded to repermissioning, you don't have a business relationship with them, you can't get them to give you consent.
Yeah, then really it's a stance that actually they're just not interested anymore, and they're not going to be valuable to you as a business either. And when you're looking at sending a repermissioning campaign, you need to be analysing the risk of sending that, because the more and more emails that you send, like you said, the more and more risk and the lower quality of that data as well.
Let's look at telephone opt-ins. If people have phoned up over the telephone and they've said, I want to register because I would like to see this property, or I would like to know more about the area, or that kind of thing, but they've registered with you over the phone, you weren't recording those opt-ins, but you have that business relationship with them?
Yep, so if you have a business relationship, then there's a need there to provide that service to that customer. That's why they provide that data. There's a couple of other things that you could look at doing as well. The number one thing would be to put a date stamp on when you got that opt-in if you're entering that data into a CRM. You could also look at, but it's not compulsory, to send an email to confirm with them, this is the conversation that we had, please click this link just to confirm that you're happy for us to send this information that we spoke about.
And if you want to go down that route, if you really want to go down that route, you can make them engaging. Hi, great to speak to you over the phone. Just want to check that this data is correct and that you're looking for this and you're happy for us to send you properties with this budget and this area. And if they click it, you've got consent, you've got a relationship, you've got everything, haven't you, really?
Exactly. What a perfect way to follow up after a telephone call. You could also look at recording calls, but obviously that, for some businesses, will be quite out of reach. And it isn't always necessary, but again, it goes back to your data processing policy. Make sure you have that documented in there.
And when we look at past telephone opt-ins, because obviously it's great moving forwards, now we know about all of this. Past telephone opt-ins, if there is a business relationship there, fantastic. Look at the length of time that relationship kind of was in place. What's the average length of time that you're looking for a property? 3, 4 months, that kind of thing. So after about 6 months, maybe send them an email and say, hey, are you still looking for a property? Are these still your search terms? If not, let us know and we'll change them for you. Or if you're not looking anymore and don't want to hear from us, just click here to unsubscribe.
Yeah, exactly. Use it as a data cleansing exercise as well.
Do I need to get a new opt-in under the GDPR? Well, again, we've touched on this one. If your opt-in is GDPR compliant, as in it's got an affirmative action, it's transparent, it's granular if there's more than one thing, then in fairness, no, you don't.
No, exactly, you don't. If you have any doubt in that, then you need to start reassessing exactly what that opt-in consent looks like.
And you touched on this as well. This is fines and risks. Now, this is a very, very interesting point, because there is an argument to say that some of the bigger companies that might have been caught already and have got a fine, we know that, say, Honda, Flybe, Morris, all these companies that have received those fines, and those fines are around the £10,000 mark. For a big company with a list of hundreds of thousands of people, if we're just being totally honest about it, to get a fine of £10,000 to grab a load of data is probably a nothing to them, and you could argue worth the risk. So I'm not saying that's why they did it, I'm just saying that there is an argument that potentially that is a reason to do it. So if that is the way that you want to roll, if you're already doing that, then you have to weigh the risk up. We can't tell you what to do, we can't make you be compliant, but you know, that is a talking point and it's something that should be mentioned.
Yeah, and just, I suppose the other point of that is to just think about what your existing relationships will look like with that customer if you do decide that you're going to take that risk. Because ultimately you want to create a long-lasting relationship so they come back to you. If you abuse that data, would they come back?
Exactly right, and let's have a look at that data. You're contacting these people, have they engaged? Are they engaging with you regularly? When was the last time they opened an email you sent or picked up the phone or you had any contact with them? Because if that hasn't been for a while, they've clearly moved on or they've done something, you're not going to get anything out of contacting them anyway. So risking a fine for that is just pointless. And in fact, having them on your CRM, making people pay any attention to a bit of data that has nothing to do with anything anymore is just wasting time, and it's just not worth having, is it?
No, it goes back to the vanity metrics again about how big a list size is, but you only have 10% opening your emails. And that's something that we've, in email marketing, we've battled for a number of years. So you need to really, really question why you would continue to keep sending to somebody like that. So,
let's conclude. What's next? What do I need to know? That's the title of this segment. It's probably the most difficult one to go. But look, we've got this far through this presentation. We've answered all the questions. We've understood now that the GDPR is not something that should be a scaremongering event. It's not something where you should take all your data, throw it in the bin, and walk away from it. And in fact, for a lot of agents, hopefully, you're now realizing that a lot of your data, you can continue to contact, you can continue to provide your service, your matching services, your newsletters with property roundups, bits of marketing, contacting your tenants and your landlords. It's just about doing it sensibly. And so let's just have a look at what you need to know to move forwards with the GDPR. And don't worry, there'll be lots of information that we'll be sending out after this video, loads of links. We're going to try and make this as simple as possible. What do I need to do now? Number one, a data audit. Do you have evidence of consent if they're not a client?
Yeah, that should be your first step. And asking yourself the question, what do I want to do with the data that I've collected, or that you're going to collect in the future as well, to make sure that you are, from now, if you're not already, collecting the right consent.
And existing data can be split down to customers, to 6 months old, to a year old, to people we don't speak to anymore, to landlords, and you can treat that data in very, very different ways, so as long as you're compliant with each set that you deal with.
Yeah, and that's the best way to do that anyway, because you'll be personalising to the actual customer.
So we're looking at, is it recent? There is no point even bothering with data from 15 years ago?
No, not unless they are an existing customer and they are still a customer with you, or you have a need to provide support to that customer.
So long-term customer. If it isn't, you can consider the re-permission campaign. We start with the most recent openers and the most engaged customers first and move on from there, but we must remember, we don't send them to anyone we didn't have the permission in the first place, and we don't send them to existing customers if we don't need to, or if it's going to upset our business practices, because that's not the point of the GDPR either.
No, exactly. Use it as an opportunity, as a data refresh, if you do already have consent, but you want that documentation to be much clearer and GDPR compliant.
So the privacy policy, this is the next bit. This is a document that maybe sits on your website, and it's just got to be clear why I'm collecting the data, why I'm holding the data, and what I'm going to do with it, what I'm going to send you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the clearer it is, the better. It doesn't have to be a written document. It can be a video. Make it engaging, make it really easy to understand, and have it displayed at every single point of the sign-up process.
And the data handling policy.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be something complicated. When you think about a data handling policy, sometimes it can give you a bit of a fear that, what is this document? But it can just literally be an A4 page, and you just literally write out exactly how you're going to collect, store, and then look after that customer data, and how long you're going to keep it for. And the reasons why as well, so that if the ICO did want to question your processes, you have a document in hand.
And it's going to help you out as a business as well, because you're going to know exactly what your process is with data, if someone registers or that kind of thing. And the ICO are very, very good. They've got links on their site, checklists, templates. So there you have it, the GDPR in a nutshell. No scaremongering, no horror stories, and I don't think we've deleted a lot of data. We haven't lost our customers, and pretty much our changes are a few policies, a slight difference to our sign-ups, and actually just becoming a bit more aware of how we're using, storing, processing data, what we're sending and who we're sending it to. Anything that you want to know in relation to storing data on the DezRez system, pick up the phone, they'll speak to you, they've got documentation, they can help you out there. Anything from Growth Track, if you want to ask us any questions, pick up the phone, we'll happily give you all the information about how our systems store your data, and also, you know, we're here for just general GDPR advice. We've put this video together, we're going to put lots of links out there and documentation from the ICO, templates, you name it, it's all going to be there. If you need us, we're here for you. But please, 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 if you take one thing away from this video, it's don't be scared of the GDPR.
No, use it as an opportunity to build trust with your customers.
Jenna, thank you so much for filming this video with us. We've really had fun. Well, we've kind of had fun, I suppose. As much fun as you can do with the GDPR, but it's been great and it's been really, really informative, and I hope you guys have taken something away from this and now understand exactly what it's all about.